Good morning, Kenya. Rise and shine to the morning momentum. Your daily dose of a comprehensive rundown of the top stories making the headlines on the papers. Today is the 10th day of June. It's a Tuesday, and we are glad you have joined us this morning. The morning momentum is a daily compendium of local and international news, human interest stories, current affairs, and expert opinion. Use the hashtag the morning momentum at Younib Media TV at Alphonce Albakwekwe. Let's take a look at the top stories making the headlines on the Daily Nation this morning. On the front page, it's the controversial story of the killing of a teacher in Homa Bay who was, taken by the police and brought all the way to Nairobi. So the headline states, the commanders. Kenyans look up to top police bosses for answers as to who killed a teacher in custody. Security chiefs are under pressure to resolve the mysterious death of Albert Ojwang, a Voi-based teacher and blogger, an incident that has sparked nationwide outrage. Ojwang died hours after his arrest by detectives investigating a complaint by their boss, Mr. Lagat. That story is beefed up for you on page 2 and page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. The timeline of the events preceding his death at 1:30 p.m. on Saturday, 7th of June, detectives storm the rural home of Ojwang in Homa Bay. They then arrest him alongside another suspect and take the two to Nairobi. 9 p.m. the same day, after questioning at DCI headquarters in Nairobi, the two are driven out and locked up in separate police stations in the city. At 12:39 a.m. Sunday, that is 8th of June now, a duty officer on a routine check finds Ojwang unconscious in the cell. He is pronounced dead at Mbagathi Hospital just a few hours after being booked at the police cell. And on Monday, 9th of June, police chiefs and IPOA officials visit the Central Police Station and promise speedy investigations into the mystery death. So at the moment, the numbers stand at 20, which is the number of people who have died in police cells since 2013. And more of that is beefed up for you on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. On page 14, SHA demands full annual premiums to treat patients. Thousands of Kenyans are being denied treatment after the Social Health Authority, SHA, began demanding full annual premium payments before providing care. That story is beefed up for you on page 14. On page 25 this morning, on the agricultural sector, Kenya's coffee yields set to grow, improve earnings. Now, the U.S. Department of Agriculture projects 13.3% growth in the country's coffee production in the next marketing period that begins October 25th. On page 10 this morning, teachers issue strike warning over pay. Teachers' unions have warned of disruptions to learning in public schools following deadlock over negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement. The warning comes 3 weeks to expiry of the 2021-2025 CBA. The unions signed with the Teachers Service Commissions, and the current CBA lapses on June 30th. Also on page 4 and page 7, Ruto at 1,000 days, President's mounting debt headache. The country's debt has risen to 11 trillion shillings after Ruto's administration added 1.4 trillion by last December. The president says for every 10 shillings in revenue, 6 shillings goes towards repaying loans, leaving very little for development. Now let's get up close and candid with the Nation on page 2 this morning. Police chiefs under pressure over teacher's death while in custody. Initially, the police had said that Ojwang died after hitting his head against the wall in the cell. Rights organizations and the public condemned the police and called for speedy and independent investigations. Now, police officers that have been interdicted so far include Samson Talam, who was the officer commanding station, Samuel Nganga, duty officer, and who also doubles up as the deputy OCS. There's Charles Muriuki, duty NCO, Debian Lusweti, crime aid, Peter Kimani, sales sentry, and Evelyn Kanyiri, report office personnel. Now, on page 3 this morning, he is very safe, police told deceased blogger's family. He died hours after his arrest by detectives investigating a social media post on X. Police claim Ojwang died by suicide after hitting his head on the wall of his cell at Nairobi's Central Police Station. This is a question that still has many puzzles around it to be solved. Among the many questions being asked is why Ojwang had to be ferried all the way to Nairobi, yet there are police stations in Homa Bay. Let's take a look at page 4. 11 trillion shillings and counting. Insatiable appetite for borrowing persists. Now, Auditor General warns 4.2 trillion budget for the 2025-2026 financial year not aligning with the revenue streams. Ours is about exploiting available local operations to generate income to run the country, Ruto said in his pre-election pledge. On page 5 this morning, learned friends, the doctor and Don at State House. This is the first time the country has been led by such a combination. Expectations were high among Kenyans. Now, mixed views, leaders' opinions. Maragua MP Mary Maua defended the president saying, and I quote, "This is a leader who will heal this country. He is not a doctor by default, but by hard-earned experience." But Democracy for Citizens Party Chair, Eminent Persons Council Minor Commander criticized the president's academic approach. You want to catch up with more of those insights on page 5. On page 6 this morning, gender gap. Ruto, president who ghosted women. Kenyan women, girls can only wait and hope as the administration marks 1,000 days in office. Most of the promises in the Kenya Kwanza Women Charter have not been fulfilled. You'll catch up with that on page 6. On page 7 this morning, about diplomacy. On foreign policy, Ruto is learning on the job. Will pursue good relations with all for Kenya's benefit, Mudavadi says. Nearly 3 years after coming to power, the Kenya Kwanza administration has trailed, and moved. You want to catch up with that on page 7. Let's move on and take a look at more stories on page 10. Teachers in strike warning over delayed CBA talks. This raises headache, and TSC says that salary increments were not factored into the 2025-2026 budget. Unions accuse employer of sitting on their proposals for months as time runs out. At a glance, key demands by the unions: number 1 is salary increments. The 3 unions are demanding increments of between 30% and 70%. Number 2, increase in allowances by between 30% and 100%. And the demand number 3 is review of career progression guidelines to change entry level, as well as ensure regular promotions for classroom teachers. That story is beefed up for you on page 10. On page 12 this morning, police deny shooting during the 2024 Gen Z protests. Masai was shot during anti-tax protests on June 2024. Senior police officer says none of the issued firearms was discharged. That story is beefed up for you on page 12. Now let's move on and take a look at page 14. Labour, Mwangangi says we don't have 9 billion shillings for NHIF staff payout. Now, the Social Health Authority does not have 9 billion shillings required to pay hundreds of former NHIF employees who opted for early retirement during the transition into the new health system. SHA CEO Mercy Mwangangi said that the authority does not have the money to facilitate the exit of employees aged over 55 years who had expressed interest in retiring. Now, also on page 14 this morning, patients denied treatment as SHA demands a full payment. Affected Kenyans talk of pain of seeing ailing family members stand away. The state has been advertising a recently launched feature that allows contributors to pay in installments. That story is beefed up for you on page 14 of the Daily Nation this morning. Moving on swiftly, we shift gears now and take a look at the expert opinion. Now, Africa's AI moment, why community input is key. True digital sovereignty means African institutions must sorry. True digital sovereignty means African institutions must retain control over data infrastructure, shape regulatory frameworks, and define ethical standards that align with our values. Now, on page 17, betraying Gen Z's tribeless ideal. And a key a brand that launched in 2020 as the COVID-19 pandemic brought the world to a standstill. The event and deco business has grown in leaps and bounds. You'll catch up with that inspiring story on the Powering SMEs article published inside the Daily Nation this morning. So now let's move on and take a look at county news. We start with Nyandarua County. Pesticides found in potatoes banned, state agency says. Now, a study conducted by Egerton University found that residues of two pesticides were above the allowable limits. Now, also in Nakuru this morning, conference to review 13 years of GMO in the country. Kenya will review its progress in adopting biotechnology during a 3-day national biosafety conference to be held from today to Thursday in Naivasha. Organized by the National Biosafety Authority, the 13th edition of the annual conference is themed 13 years later, building trust and ensuring safety of genetically modified organisms. Now let's take a look at briefly in Nairobi, Mukuru fire victims get foodstuffs and bedding. More than 100 families that were rendered homeless after fire in Vietnam B area of Mukuru Kwanjenga slums have received foodstuffs and bedding from the national government. Area chairman Elkanah Onchore said that the government distributed mattresses, rice, beans, sanitary towels and blankets. In Machakos County, Wavinya announces record 2 billion shillings revenue. Governor Wavinya Ndeti on Sunday announced that the county's on-source revenue collection had hit an all-time high of 2 billion. She said through countrywide revenue marked. Now, also this morning in the Metropolitan, woman gets 5 years for stabbing husband to death. A woman accused of killing her husband over alleged infidelity and assault has been sentenced to 5 years in jail by the High Court, which found she acted in the heat of a violent domestic dispute. Ms. Violet Amagove received the lenient sentence after pleading that she was a battered woman and that her actions were triggered by provocation and abuse. That story is beefed up for you on page 22. And now we shift gears and take a look at the international scene. Tunisian Algerian activists aim to break Gaza siege. Now, hundreds of activists from Tunisia and Algeria boarded buses in Tunis yesterday on a convoy which aims to reach Egypt's Rafah border. The convoy of steadfastness in an effort to break the siege imposed on their people in Gaza and to deliver the tons of humanitarian aid piled up at Rafah crossing and in Arish. Now, it comprises around 1,500 Tunisian and 250 Algerian participants who are planning to travel through Libya and Egypt towards Rafah border. That story is beefed up for you on page 24. Also this morning, police lay siege at home of Cameroon opposition chief. The 71-year-old hopes to end Biya's 4-decade grip on power. Kamto says police have surrounded his home for the past 2 days since his return from France. Briefly in Kyiv, Russia launches biggest drone attack on Ukraine. Now, Russia hit Ukraine overnight with its largest drone attack since the start of the war, causing some damage at a military airfield in the west of the country that was one of its main targets, the Ukrainian Air Force said yesterday. In Moscow this morning, Musk's father says Trump dispute must end. The dispute between Donald Trump and Elon Musk was triggered by months of intense stress on both sides, and the public battle between the U.S. president and the billionaire donor needs to stop, Musk's father told Reuters. Trump and Musk began exchanging insults last week on the social media, with the Tesla and SpaceX CEO describing the president's watchdog has nullified a decision by the Kenya Airports Authority to terminate 117 million shillings tender for installation of 10 million shillings tender for installation of security check system in the energy sector. Kenya Power to buy 2,400 meters in 4 months. Kenya Power will acquire at least 2,400 meters at an undisclosed price by September to speed up connections and replace faulty ones. The electricity distributor last week closed a tender where it sought manufacturers to supply the low voltage current transformers meters within 4 months upon awarding of the deal. It says it needs 4,000 meters of different capacities every month. Now, in the automobile sector, Mobius Motors, Kenya's new owner, will resume assembling the Mobius 3 model within the next 6 months, with the plans to roll out newer models. Now, the company ran into headwinds and was acquired by Middle East-based investment and technology firm Silverbox in March in a transaction that saved the car brand from liquidation. Now, let's take a look at sports news on the nation this morning. We start with athletics. Now, athletes protest trials shift to US. AK will select 10,000 men and 5,000 meters women teams for September's World Championships. AK defends move, citing Nairobi's high altitude as a limiting factor in achieving fast times for Tokyo showpiece. That story is beefed up for you on page 34. On page 35 this morning, sisters fight for slots in Malkia Strikers team for global event. Exclusion of several experienced stars from team sparks mixed reactions. Provisional squad of 29 players will start training FIVB World Championships set for August in Thailand. Also this morning, Kenya gears up for Davis Cup battle in Angola. This is all about tennis. Now, Team Kenya arrived in Luanda, Angola on Sunday evening ahead of the 2025 Davis Cup Africa Group 4 tournament that serves off tomorrow. On the cover page of the Daily Nation this morning, unfinished stadiums, missed tournament deadlines, dent President's sports scorecard. Lack of funds revealed as the main reason for the slow pace of works at the match venues, with the tournament less than 2 months away. The 2024 CHAN tournament has been postponed twice due to inadequate preps, with Kenya the main culprit. Now, with that story, we come to the tail end of the morning momentum this 10th day of June 2025. Thank you so much for choosing to stay with the best youth television network in East and Central Africa, Younib TV. The program on air has been the morning momentum. Our heartfelt gratitude also goes to all those who made this broadcast a success. The Chief Controller, Peninah Wachera, and behind the lens this morning, Brian Ngoha. See you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until then, do have a beautiful Tuesday. My name is Alphonce. Ouma.